Nearly 4 years after his death, Michael Jackson's mother is trying to hold entertainment company AEG Live accountable for it. Katherine Jackson is blaming the company for hiring Dr. Conrad Murray. Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in Jackson's death. The trial begins Tuesday, and Mrs. Jackson is reportedly suing for billions of dollars. Let's bring in CNN legal contributor Paul Callan and defense attorney Rachel Self. Good to see both of you.
Nice to be with you.
Good to see you.
Let me begin with you. This is a negligence case, a civil case. How will the Jackson family try to prove this?
Well, I think they're going to have a tough time. It's kind of a ridiculous case. Picture this. Michael Jackson says to the concert promoters, I want you to hire my personal physician, a guy who's licensed in 4 states and has never had a disciplinary problem brought against him, Conrad Murray. The promoters hire Conrad Murray. Then, at Jackson's request, he administers propofol, killing Michael Jackson. And now the Jackson family is trying to blame the concert promoter. They got to convince a jury of that, and they want $40 billion. I say it's an uphill battle to sell that theory.
So, Rachel, are you saying this is laughable?
Yeah, I agree with Paul in this, Frederica. I mean, what we're dealing with here, it doesn't make somebody professionally incompetent to have personal debt. And there's only one remaining claim here, and AEG actually has taken this one remaining claim up to the appeals court. The negligent hiring claim is the only claim remaining. And they're saying, look, we can't see that it's reasonably foreseeable that this doctor was going to even be a bad doctor, let alone commit criminal manslaughter, criminal manslaughter in this case, which is what happened. So I think that it's going to be a pretty strong case for AEG. But what AEG is saying to the appeals court is, look, we shouldn't need to go through the expense of having a jury trial here in this silliness that is this case. And Katherine Jackson putting these kids through this, I mean, this is everything that Mr. Jackson didn't want to see happen to his children. He was an enormously private person. He was an enormously private person with regard to his medical records, with regard to his children, and to see everything being brought out for the purposes of $40 billion, which is unheard of, is really tragic.
And when you say putting these kids through this, you mean potentially Michael Jackson's children could be called to testify. What would they have to offer, and why would they be called, Rachel?
Well, they would be called to support any sort of emotional distress claim, which at this point has been thrown out. And so I'm hoping that the judge does not make the children testify in this case. And I think that in this particular instance, these children, under California law, had the statute of limitations on a wrongful death case in California is 2 years. So technically, the kids had until they were 20 years old to file this, because once they turned 18, their statute of limitations would have run. I think that putting the kids through this at this young age is just, I think it's disgusting.
And go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say, Frederica, what's weird about this case is, obviously, they have the right, the family could sue Conrad Murray for medical malpractice. As a matter of fact, he's been convicted criminally, and he's been sentenced, I think, to 4 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. But you could sue him for medical malpractice, but they're not satisfied with that because there's not enough insurance money available. So they've concocted this theory that the concert promoter is responsible for the death because they hired the very physician Michael Jackson told them to hire. So I think in the end, although maybe you could argue that there's something here for a jury to decide, it's a pretty uphill battle here to convince a jury to accept any of this. And as Rachel says, if you got to put the kids through the torture of a trial, you have to wonder what people are thinking in terms of bringing such an action.
Paul Callan, Rachel Self, thanks so much to both of you.
Okay, nice being with you.
Thank you for having me.